Chapter 1. The Ego's Masquerade. The ego is not who you are, it is who you think you are. Eckhart Tolle. The ego is not an enemy, but a mask. It is a mental construction, a story we unconsciously believe about who we are. This story is woven from past experiences, beliefs, societal roles, and other people's opinions. We say, I am a doctor, I am successful, or I'm not good enough, without realizing these are thoughts, not truths. The ego thrives on separation. It defines itself in contrast to others. I am better than him. I am not as pretty as her. They don't understand me. From this illusion of separateness, conflict is born. Competition, insecurity, defensiveness. We suffer not because of who we truly are, but because we've mistaken the mask for our face. Spiritual traditions across time have pointed to the concept of no self, a state of awareness untouched by personal identity. No self doesn't mean you don't exist. It means the fixed, rigid me you defend is an illusion. Underneath the ego's mask is a presence that doesn't need validation to feel whole. To begin awakening, we must see the ego not as bad, but as a useful fiction. When we notice its patterns, craving approval, fearing judgment, clinging to roles, we begin to disidentify from it. This is not self-destruction, but self-liberation.
Real-life examples are case studies. Sarah's identity crisis. Sarah had always been proud of her role as a high-performing corporate executive. Her job title wasn't just what she did, it was who she was. After an unexpected layoff, she felt unmoored, anxious, even worthless. The loss of the role shattered her sense of identity. But this crisis became a doorway. In therapy and silence, she began to ask, who am I without the title? This question didn't lead to a new label, but to a deeper presence. For the first time, she experienced herself not as something defined, but as something aware. The influencer's emptiness. Jason had over 2 million followers and constant brand deals. Outwardly, he was admired, but privately he felt hollow. His moods rose and fell with likes, comments, and engagement. Every post became a performance of the person he thought he should be. When he finally took a break from social media, a surprising quietness emerged. He noticed how addicted he was to being seen, and how little he actually knew himself. This break became the beginning of his spiritual journey, not by achieving more, but by shedding the mask.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Self-identity reflection. Write down 10 words or phrases you commonly use to describe yourself. For example, smart, shy, mother, artist, disciplined. Ask, which of these come from internal truth, and which are tied to how others see me? How do I feel when one of these identities is challenged or removed? 2. Thought observation practice. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. Close your eyes and watch your thoughts arise, without labeling them as mine or judging them. Just notice, there is a thought. Then let it go. This practice helps you experience thoughts not as you, but as passing events in awareness. 3. Journal prompt. Recall a moment when you felt completely alive, connected, or at peace. Were you performing a role or simply being? What does that moment reveal about your true self beyond identity? Summary of main points. The ego is a mental construction shaped by memory, labels, and external opinions. It creates separation and thrives on comparison, leading to suffering. The concept of no self reveals our deeper nature, aware, spacious, and beyond fixed identity. The first step of awakening is not to destroy the ego, but to see through its illusions. You are not your name, your roles, or your story. You are the awareness in which all of these arise.
Chapter 2. The Roots of Ego. The ego is a veil between humans and God. Rumi. The ego does not arrive suddenly in adulthood. It is planted early like a seed. As children, we begin life in pure awareness, unburdened by identity. But gradually, through praise and punishment, roles and rules, we are shaped. The moment we are told, "You're a good boy," or "You must be better," or "That's not who we are," a subtle split begins. We start building a self-image to be accepted, protected, and loved. At its core, the ego is born from fear of being rejected, excluded, unloved. To survive, we adapt. We learn to behave in ways that please others and suppress parts of ourselves that threaten approval. Over time, this adaptation becomes identification. We forget we adopted these masks and begin to believe we are them. Society deepens this illusion. We're praised for status, power, appearance, productivity. Nationality, religion, class, gender, these become layers of identity. While these roles can serve practical purposes, they often harden into rigid walls that separate us from others and from our deeper self. From a spiritual perspective, the ego is not evil. It is simply temporary, a tool shaped by evolution, meant to help us navigate the physical world. But what was once a tool becomes a tyrant when we mistake it for the whole truth. Awakening begins when we stop clinging to the ego as me and start seeing it as a conditioned part of the human experience.
Real-life examples or case studies. James grew up in a household where love was conditional on achievement. His father praised success and criticized failure. Over time, James internalized the belief, "I must win to be worthy." This drive made him successful, but also restless and lonely. He constantly competed with colleagues, sabotaged intimacy, and feared failure. It wasn't until a mindfulness retreat, where he was asked to observe the need to prove, that he realized how deeply his ego was tied to childhood patterns. That awareness marked the beginning of healing. Collective ego and national identity. During a heated political dispute, Mira found herself growing hostile toward those from a neighboring country. She'd always been proud of her nationality, but now it became an identity to defend. Watching the news, scrolling social media, she noticed her mind creating us versus them narratives. One evening, during meditation, she asked, "If I were born across the border, would I still feel this anger?" That moment cracked something open. She saw that what she called patriotism was often just collective ego. Identity clinging to a flag, not truth.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Reflection, upbringing and identity. List 3 ways your childhood shaped your identity. Consider parental or cultural expectations. Labels you were given, such as the smart one or the troublemaker. Roles you adopted to feel loved or safe. Then ask, do these still define me today? 2. Ego defense check-in. Recall a recent moment when you felt defensive, insulted, or not seen. What identity did you feel was being threatened? Was it a role? Example, expert, helper, leader. What was the ego trying to protect? 3. Journal prompt. beyond the roles. Who are you if you strip away the labels of parent, professional, student, or citizen? Write a paragraph starting with, "Without these roles, I am..." Let the words come from a deeper place than the mind. Summary of main points. The ego is formed through childhood conditioning and survival strategies. Fear and insecurity shape the ego's need for control, approval, and superiority. Society reinforces egoic roles through status, culture, and collective identity. The ego is not the ultimate truth. It is a temporary tool that becomes limiting when mistaken for the self. Spiritual awakening begins by tracing the ego to its roots and gently letting go.
Chapter 3. The Illusion of Separation. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Rumi. At the heart of ego lies a single pervasive illusion. I am separate. Separate from others, separate from nature, even separate from life itself. This belief in separateness, deeply embedded in the mind, creates the experience of loneliness, comparison, fear, and conflict. We draw boundaries between me and you, us and them. These boundaries might feel real, but they are drawn in thought, not in truth. From a spiritual perspective, this separation is a dream. Reality, as the mystics and sages remind us, is oneness. The apparent division between self and other is like waves thinking they are not part of the ocean. Beneath the surface movement, all things arise from the same source and are intimately connected. The illusion of ego blinds us to this unity. It builds walls where there are none. It says, I must compete to survive. I must protect myself from others. I must prove I matter. But when we look deeply, when we meditate, love, serve, or simply be, the boundaries begin to dissolve. What remains is a presence that is not isolated, but infinitely open. Compassion is the natural response that arises when this illusion fades. It is not an effort, but a realization. Their joy is my joy. Their pain is my pain. Awakening, then, is not only seeing through the self, it is recognizing we were never separate to begin with.
Real-life examples or case studies. Maria moved to a bustling new city for work. Surrounded by people, she felt invisible. Her mind whispered stories of not belonging, not being seen, not being loved. The more she believed them, the more isolated she became. Eventually, she signed up for a local volunteer group, not to fix her loneliness, but to give. Over time, something shifted. As she helped others, her sense of isolation softened. She realized her loneliness wasn't due to the city, but the ego's story of separateness. Connection had always been available. It was her openness that was missing. Corporate team transformation. A tech startup team was falling apart due to internal competition and blame. Each member defended their own ideas, guarded their territory. A leadership coach introduced a simple practice. Start each meeting by acknowledging one shared success and one contribution by another team member. Over time, defensiveness gave way to appreciation. The shift from egoic competition to collective purpose transformed the team's dynamic. They began to function as a unified system, still distinct individuals, but deeply interconnected. Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Loving kindness meditation, 5 minutes. Sit quietly, take a few deep breaths. Silently repeat these phrases for each group below. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be free. Then imagine someone you love. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be free. A stranger.
someone you struggle with. Notice how the heart softens as the boundary between I and you begins to blur. 2. Reflection, a moment of deep connection. Think of a moment when you felt one with another person, group, or nature. Ask yourself, what was absent in that moment? For example, judgment, ego, fear. What allowed the connection to arise? 3. Journal prompt. Beliefs that create division. Write freely. What beliefs do I carry that reinforce the idea that I am separate from others? How do these beliefs shape my behavior and relationships? Summary of main points. The ego maintains its power through the illusion of being separate from others. This illusion leads to conflict, loneliness, and suffering. In truth, all beings are interconnected, expressions of a single life. Awakening is the realization of no self, where the boundaries of ego dissolve. Compassion, connection, and service arise naturally from this understanding. The shift is from I to we, and ultimately from me to oneness. Chapter 4. The Ego's Stories. The mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. The ego doesn't live in the present. It survives by spinning stories of the past and future. I should have done better. They never appreciated me. What if I fail again? These are not facts. They are stories, mental narratives we mistake for reality. Our thoughts are rarely neutral. They come with emotional weight, self-judgment, regret, or fear. The ego uses these repetitive patterns to build an identity: the victim, the achiever, the failure, the misunderstood. Once formed, these mental identities become hard to question. We don't just think thoughts, we become them. But there is another way. A spiritual path invites us to witness these stories, not as truth, but as temporary clouds in the sky of awareness. When we observe thoughts without identifying with them, a space opens. That space is presence. In that space, the false self begins to dissolve. This is the beginning of no self, not the erasure of your being, but the shedding of the mind-made persona. Freedom arises not when the stories are gone, but when they no longer control you. You are not your story. You are the awareness that sees it. Real-life examples are case studies. Tom freeing himself from the past. Tom made a costly mistake in a business venture years ago. Ever since, his mind recycled the story, "I'm irresponsible, I can't be trusted." Every new opportunity triggered anxiety. Through therapy and meditation, Tom was taught to label these recurring thoughts as stories, not facts. At first, it felt strange, like denying reality. But slowly, he saw the truth. The event was real, the identity was not. In learning to observe without believing, he reclaimed his peace. The argument that lingered. After a heated exchange with her coworker, Jenna replayed the argument in her head for days. Each time she felt more justified, more hurt. But she also noticed, the more she replayed it, the more disconnected and bitter she became. A friend suggested a simple practice. Ask yourself, what am I defending? What story am I feeding? In that moment of inquiry, something softened. She realized the ego was clinging to being right, and it was costing her peace.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Thought labeling practice. For one full day, every time a thought arises, especially ones about yourself or others, pause and mentally label it as story. Examples: I always mess things up. Story about failure. They don't respect me. Story about rejection. Notice how many thoughts are recycled narratives and how they lose power when seen for what they are. 2. Reflection on recurring identity beliefs. Ask yourself, what is one thought about myself I've repeated for years? E.g., I'm not lovable. I must succeed to matter. How does this belief shape my behavior, relationships, or emotions? What if it's not true? 3. Journal prompt. The true self speaks. Write a one-page story about your life, but not from the voice of your ego. Instead, write from the perspective of your deeper awareness. Begin with, I am not the story of my past. I am. Let the words arise from stillness rather than memory. Summary of main points. The ego constructs a false identity through repetitive mental stories. These stories often center on fear, regret, comparison, and control. Identifying with thoughts reinforces suffering and separation. Observing thoughts as stories creates space between you and the mind. No self is the freedom found in that space, the realization that you are not your story, but the awareness behind it. Presence is the healing ground where ego stories lose their grip. Chapter 5. The Ego and Desire. The root of suffering is attachment. Buddha. The ego is always reaching. It lives in a constant state of not enough money, not enough love, not enough recognition. Desire in itself is not the problem. Desire can inspire creativity, connection, and growth. But egoic desire is different. It arises from a sense of lack, a belief that something outside of us will finally complete us. This craving keeps us chasing, and even when we get what we want, the satisfaction is fleeting. Why? Because the ego is never truly fulfilled. It always wants more, or fears losing what it has. Every attachment to a relationship, a status, a possession, is like tying a rope from your well-being to something unstable. When it moves, you suffer. The deeper the attachment, the stronger the illusion that your happiness depends on it. But your true nature, no self, is not lacking. It doesn't need to grasp. It is whole, present, and content in the now. The spiritual path is not about renouncing old desires, but about recognizing the ego's illusion that you are incomplete without something more. In truth, peace is not found in achieving, but in being. When you rest in awareness, without clinging or resisting, you experience a contentment that no object can provide.
Real-life examples or case studies. Lisa filled her weekends with shopping. Every new outfit, gadget, or decor piece gave her a temporary high, a moment of I am enough. But the crash always came. Her apartment filled with things, but her heart felt empty. One day, she tried a meditation class out of curiosity. Sitting in silence, she noticed a deeper hunger beneath the purchases, a longing to feel whole. Slowly, she began practicing minimalism, not as a trend, but as a lifestyle. Over time, Lisa discovered peace not in having more, but in needing less. The CEO's unseen hunger. Daniel was the youngest executive at his firm. Promotions, bonuses, and accolades flowed in. From the outside, he was living the dream. But inside, a quiet emptiness persisted. He began to notice that each accomplishment brought a spike of satisfaction, then silence. In therapy, he traced his ambition to a childhood need for approval. He realized his ego wasn't chasing success, it was chasing love. When he started connecting with people without performance and meditating daily, the craving softened. For the first time, he felt enough as he was.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Desire inquiry exercise. Write down 5 things you strongly desire right now, e.g., a new home, more followers, a romantic partner. For each one, ask, what feeling am I really seeking? E.g., safety, validation, excitement. Then close your eyes and imagine feeling that right now, without needing the thing. Can you access the feeling from within? 2. Reflection, the goal that didn't satisfy. Recall a time you achieved a long-held goal. How long did the joy last? What part of you still felt unsatisfied? Was the goal a response to a deeper fear or belief of being incomplete? 3. Journal prompt, life without the chase. Choose one major desire, e.g., fame, wealth, relationship. Journal on this. What would my life feel like if I no longer chased this? What might open up inside me if I let it go, even for a moment? Summary of main points. The ego equates happiness with the fulfillment of desires, leading to endless craving and suffering. Attachment to outcomes strengthens the illusion of a separate, incomplete self. True fulfillment is not found in having, but in being, resting in awareness. The path of no self is not about denial, but about liberation from the illusion of lack. When desire is no longer a chain, contentment becomes a natural state.
Chapter 6. The Ego in Relationships. Love is not selective, just as the light of the sun is not selective. Eckhart Tolle. Few things activate the ego as powerfully as relationships. Whether it's romantic, parental, professional, or friendly, relationships become the stage where the ego performs, defends, demands, and projects. The ego does not seek love. It seeks validation, control, and identity reinforcement. We often enter relationships hoping the other person will complete us. We want them to fill the inner void we secretly fear. We place unconscious expectations on them. Make me feel worthy, secure, important. When those needs go unmet, as they inevitably do, disappointment, resentment, and blame follow. This is egoic attachment, not love. True love is not possession, projection, or need. It is presence. It is the clear seeing of another being, beyond roles or conditions. It does not say, I need you to be this for me. It says, I see you as you are, and I am with you. From a spiritual view, every relationship is a mirror, revealing where our ego is still clinging. If someone's words hurt us, it often points to a wound or belief we hold about ourselves. When we become reactive, it's often because our ego feels threatened. In this way, relationships are not just emotional experiences, they are powerful invitations to awaken. To live as no self in relationship doesn't mean we stop feeling or caring. It means we meet others from presence, not projection. We stop relating from a role, parent, partner, savior, victim, and start relating from awareness. That is where love becomes unconditional and connection becomes sacred.
Real-life examples or case studies. Emma had been married for over a decade. She loved her partner but often felt frustrated. He wasn't as emotionally expressive, didn't meet her ideal of romantic connection. In therapy, she discovered that her longing wasn't really about him. It was a need to feel validated, to be seen in a specific way. As she began meditating and doing inner work, Emma realized she had been trying to extract something from her partner that could only be found within herself. When she let go of that need, their dynamic shifted, conversations deepened. Instead of seeking completion, they began walking a path of mutual growth. The parent and projection. Carlos was a father who took pride in his daughter's academic success, but as she grew older, she began exploring the arts, a path Carlos didn't value. He felt anxiety and disappointment. In reflection, he saw that his ego had tied his own worth to her achievements. Her success wasn't just for her, it was feeding his sense of identity. Letting go wasn't easy, but when Carlos began seeing his daughter as her own being, not an extension of himself, a more genuine love emerged.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Listening without the ego. In your next conversation, try this. Don't plan your reply while the other person is speaking. Notice when the ego wants to interrupt, defend, or impress. Instead, stay present. Let each word land. This cultivates true presence and opens space for deeper connection. 2. Relationship expectation reflection. Choose one important relationship. Ask yourself, what do I expect this person to give me, e.g., validation, attention, loyalty? How does this reflect something the ego feels it lacks? What might change if I release this expectation? 3. Journal prompt. Love without conditions. Recall a moment when you felt unconditional love from or toward someone. What made it feel free, accepting, and open? Was the ego present in that moment, or was it quiet? Summary of main points. The ego seeks identity and validation through relationships, leading to conflict and disappointment. Authentic love arises from awareness, not from emotional dependency. Relationships act as mirrors, showing us where ego still governs. Living from no self means seeing others beyond roles, judgments, and expectations. Presence, acceptance, and inner wholeness are the foundation of meaningful connection. Chapter 7. The Ego's Defenses. What you resist persists. Carl Jung. The ego doesn't just build a false identity, it defends it fiercely. Whenever the ego feels threatened by criticism, failure, loss, or even love, it constructs barriers to maintain its illusion of control. These barriers are known as defense mechanisms: denial, projection, blame, rationalization, avoidance. Though these tactics may feel protective in the moment, they ultimately disconnect us from truth, others, and ourselves. At the root of these defenses is resistance. Resistance to reality as it is. The ego resists what it cannot control. It rejects emotions that threaten its self-image. It blames others to avoid shame. But in doing so, it creates inner conflict and suffering. As Jung said, what you resist persists. Unacknowledged pain doesn't disappear. It festers beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts, reactions, and relationships. The spiritual path offers a radical alternative: surrender, not as weakness or passivity, but as a conscious willingness to face reality without defense, to feel what arises without hiding, to let go of the need to be right or in control. In surrender, the ego softens, and in that space, the deeper self is revealed. Vulnerability becomes the key. When we allow ourselves to be seen, not as perfect, but as honest, something profound happens. Egoic armor cracks, and presence shines through.
This is where transformation begins, where no self is no longer a concept, but a lived experience of openness, authenticity, and peace.
Real-life examples or case studies. Mark struggled with repeated job losses. Each time, he blamed his managers, co-workers, or bad luck. But after his third firing, something shifted. In therapy, he began exploring his own role, his defensiveness, avoidance of feedback, and fear of inadequacy. For the first time, he faced the truth he had long resisted. I am afraid of not being good enough. In naming it, the power of the story began to fade. Owning his part didn't weaken him, it liberated him. With less ego to defend, Mark became more open, teachable, and connected. Avoiding grief, the armor of strength. After her father died, Julia threw herself into work. Friends praised her for being so strong, but alone, she felt hollow. She avoided grief because deep down, her ego equated sadness with weakness. Only when she allowed herself to cry, alone at first, then with a close friend, did something shift. The grief didn't destroy her, it softened her. In embracing the pain, she experienced a quiet peace the ego could never provide. The resistance dissolved, and with it, the illusion of needing to be unshakable.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. The pause of inquiry. Next time you feel defensive, when someone critiques you or you feel misunderstood, pause and ask, what part of me is being threatened? What am I trying to protect? Then breathe into that space. Don't fix, just feel. Notice how defenses lose power when seen clearly. Fear-facing reflection. Ask yourself, what emotion or truth am I most afraid to face right now? What does my ego do to avoid it? Blame, distract, deny. What might change if I welcomed it instead? Journal prompt. Surrender story. Recall a time when you stopped resisting a difficult situation, whether through acceptance, forgiveness, or honesty. Write about what happened when you let go. What did you learn about yourself? What fell away? What became possible? Summary of main points. The ego protects its identity through defenses like blame, denial, and resistance. These defenses create inner conflict and distance us from truth and peace. Surrendering to what is dissolves the egoic grip and reveals a deeper presence. Vulnerability is not weakness, but the courageous act of dismantling egoic armor. The path of no self involves meeting life openly, without defense, and finding freedom in the flow of what arises.
Chapter 8. The Path to No Self. When you let go of who you are, you become who you might be. Lao Tzu. The idea of no self can sound unsettling, even threatening to the ego. After all, so much of life revolves around strengthening identity. Who am I? What do I stand for? What do others think of me? The ego insists on a solid, consistent sense of me to feel secure. But the truth, gently revealed through deep spiritual insight, is this: there is no fixed self to be found. No self doesn't mean we cease to exist. It means we recognize that the self we take so seriously, our roles, stories, memories, preferences, is not a permanent or independent entity. It is a collection of changing experiences like clouds in a passing sky. Behind it all, there is something deeper, pure awareness, untouched by time, thought, or identity. This realization rarely arrives all at once. It unfolds through practice, meditation,
where we watch thoughts come and go without clinging. Self-inquiry, where we ask, "Who am I?" and discover the answers are always impermanent. Presence, where we drop into the now and realize that the self disappears when we stop narrating it. Importantly, no self is not nihilism. It is not the denial of life, but the freedom to live more fully, without the ego's constant fear, control, and comparison. When we no longer cling to a solid self-image, we become fluid, open, spontaneous. We stop defending, striving, or performing. We begin to be. And in that being, we rediscover connection with ourselves, with others, with all of life.
Real-life examples or case studies. Rachel, the boundless witness. Rachel had been meditating for years before attending a 10-day silent retreat. On the 7th day, something shifted. While walking mindfully in nature, she suddenly felt the boundaries between herself and the world dissolve. The wind, the trees, the sounds, they weren't separate from her. There was no Rachel watching. There was just awareness, spacious and still. The experience lasted moments, but it left a lasting impression. When she returned home, her sense of self felt lighter, less grasping. She hadn't become less of a person. She had simply stopped mistaking the person for the whole truth. The ego shaken by a near-death experience. After a car accident, Marcus spent several minutes unconscious. In those moments, he later described, there was no fear, only silence and a profound feeling of unity. When he awoke in the hospital, he realized how tightly he had been clinging to roles: entrepreneur, husband, provider. The near-death experience didn't erase those roles. It revealed they were not him. He began meditating and slowly shifting his life toward presence, service, and simplicity. He had not lost his identity. He had learned not to live inside it.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. Self-inquiry practice. Who am I? Set a timer for 10 minutes. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and ask, who am I? Each time an answer arises, I am a teacher, I am a good person, I am tired. Notice it, then ask again. Let each answer dissolve. Eventually, notice what remains when no answer sticks. That is the doorway to no self. Reflection. Life without labels. Ask yourself, what would remain if I dropped all my roles? Parent, worker, achiever, helper. Would I still exist? Who is aware of those roles in the first place? Sit with these questions not to find answers, but to experience the space they create. Journal prompt. Beyond the ego. Write about a moment in your life when you felt deeply present, alive, and unself-conscious, perhaps while immersed in nature, dancing, creating, or helping someone. What was absent in that moment? Who were you when the ego was quiet? Summary of main points. No self is not the denial of existence, but the recognition that there is no fixed, separate identity behind our thoughts and roles. Through meditation, presence, and inquiry, we see the ego as a pattern, not as our true self. The path to no self brings profound freedom, peace, and connection with life as it is. Awakening requires courage, not to become someone new, but to let go of who we thought we were.
Chapter 9. Living Beyond Ego. The greatest awakening is to live as if you were never born. Zen proverb. What happens after we glimpse no self? After we realize the ego is not who we are, how do we live? The answer is not retreat, not escape, but integration. Living beyond ego doesn't mean abandoning the world or denying responsibility. It means engaging fully with life, but without the story of me at the center. You still work,
parent, serve, create, but you do so with presence, not performance, with awareness, not identification. This is the paradox of no self. You are nothing. The stories, roles, labels do not define you. You are everything because without the ego's boundaries, you are one with all life. From this place, a different kind of life begins to unfold, not guided by ambition, insecurity, or fear of how you're perceived, but by compassion, stillness, and simplicity. There's no longer a need to prove, impress, or possess. Life becomes lighter, even amidst challenges, because you are no longer clinging to a fragile self-image. And yet this way of being is not passive. It's deeply alive. Compassion arises because you are no longer separate. Humility emerges because there is no self to elevate. Presence deepens because you are no longer lost in time. Living beyond ego is not a one-time shift. It's a continuous practice of remembering, of letting go again and again, not to become someone new, but to return to what you already are, awareness in motion, life itself.
Real-life examples or case studies. Teaching as service, not self-promotion. John, a high school teacher, once prided himself on praise from colleagues and students. Every lesson felt like a performance, but after a period of inner exploration, including meditation and mindfulness, he began shifting his focus. Instead of trying to be the best, he began trying to be present. He listened more, judged less, and taught from a place of genuine care. Without ego in the way, teaching became a joy, not because it made him feel important, but because it became an expression of love. Selflessness in crisis. During a natural disaster, relief volunteer Maya spent weeks distributing supplies, organizing shelters, and comforting strangers. A journalist asked her why she worked so tirelessly. Her response, "I don't think about it. It just feels natural to help." In those moments of crisis, she wasn't acting from identity. There was no thought of being seen as good or heroic. There was only presence, clarity, and action arising spontaneously. This is no self in motion, compassion without ego. Practical exercises and reflection questions. 1. Ego-free kindness. Do one kind thing today without telling anyone. A donation, a compliment, a helpful gesture, done anonymously or silently. Afterward, observe how it feels to act with no expectation of credit. Notice the inner space that opens when action flows freely. 2. Presence in the ordinary. Choose a mundane task, eating, walking, brushing your teeth. Do it slowly, without multitasking. Feel each movement. Notice sounds, smells, and textures. Let the ego's commentary fade and just be in the task. This is everyday enlightenment. 3. Journal prompt. Living without the mask. Imagine waking up tomorrow with no concern for how others perceive you. How would you dress, speak, move, or choose differently? What would remain if the need to perform disappeared? Write from that freedom. Let the words be as unfiltered as possible. Summary of main points. Living beyond ego means engaging in life with presence, not performance. No self does not mean detachment. It means full, compassionate participation in the moment. Humility, kindness, and clarity arise naturally when the ego softens. Enlightenment is not escape, but integration, becoming fully human without being ego-bound. Each moment offers a new chance to let go, to return to the still, open awareness that lives beneath identity. Chapter 10. The Eternal Now. The only reality is now. The final illusion the ego clings to is time. It lives in memory and anticipation, regret and worry. It says, "I will be happy when,"
or I was better back then. But the truth is simple and always overlooked. Reality only ever happens now. The ego cannot survive in the present moment. It needs the past to define its identity, what I've done, what happened to me. It needs the future to sustain its desires and fears, what I need to get, what I might lose. In contrast, no self lives beyond time. It does not cling to what was or grasp at what might be. It simply is, awake, aware, and free. This is not an abstract idea. It is a direct experience available in any moment. When you are fully present, feeling your breath, watching the trees move, listening to someone with complete attention, the ego fades. There is no story, no division, no effort, just being. And in that being, there is peace, aliveness, and unity. This is the essence of awakening, not becoming something else, but realizing you were never separate, never divided, never apart. You are not in time. You are awareness in which time appears. You are the stillness in which all movement arises. And this stillness is always now.
Real-life examples or case studies. Anna, a cancer survivor, spent years fearing the return of illness. Her mind constantly jumped between medical reports and imagined futures. Eventually, during a mindfulness retreat, she had a simple but life-changing realization: I'm alive now. She began practicing presence, not as an escape, but as a commitment to life. She started walking slowly, eating consciously, breathing deeply. Over time, the grip of fear loosened. Peace came not from a guarantee of health, but from dwelling in what was undeniably real, this moment. The musician in flow. During a live performance, jazz guitarist Leo often loses all sense of time. He doesn't think, he doesn't try, he simply plays. Later, he reflects, it's like something moves through me, I disappear. In these moments, the self vanishes. There's no ego measuring success, no mind narrating the moment, only presence. This is not an escape from life, it is the deepest immersion in it.
Practical exercises and reflection questions. Presence practice, 5-minute sensory meditation. Choose a sense, sight, sound, touch, or breath. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Focus fully on that sensory experience without commentary. Let thoughts arise and fall, returning to the present again and again. Notice how the sense of self begins to quiet. What remains is awareness. Reflection. Ego's destructions. Ask yourself, what thought patterns most often pull me out of the now? Example, what if I should have? How do these thoughts reinforce a separate identity? What helps me return gently to presence? Journal prompt, a moment of pure presence. Write about a time when you were completely present, perhaps in nature, during an act of love, or in stillness. What was absent in that moment? What did you feel? What did it reveal about who you truly are?
Summary of main points. The ego survives by clinging to time, past and future narratives that define and defend identity. The present moment is the only reality, and the only place ego cannot exist. No self is not a concept to grasp, but a state to live, a natural expression of timeless awareness. By returning to the now again and again, we dissolve the illusion of ego
and awaken to the truth of who we are. You are not your past. You are not your story. You are not your mind. You are this moment, alive, aware, free.